ZJB Radio.
The following is a paid political broadcast by the United Alliance, a grouping of talented individuals committed to providing visionary, competent, and accountable governance of Montserrat's affairs.
Mayday! Montserrat in trouble! Somebody come rescue us, man! Montserrat was sailing in full speed under the leadership of Reuben Meade. Then they turned the ship over to a captain named Romeo. Then all of a sudden the ship started going down. So they brought a new captain hailing from long ground. Some people start swimming, some even start drowning. Montserrat in trouble. Reuben rescue my people. United Alliance. United Alliance. United. Montserrat is in distress. We need you to clean up this mess. United Alliance. United Alliance. United. With your strong leadership, we know you can steer this ship. You have the capacity to turn this country around. With your competent crew, we will rebound. It's not too late. In your team, we put our faith. United Alliance, come rescue your people. United. We need a captain on board. Yeah, man. Our country is now at the brink. If we don't change course, we bound to sink. So we
Good morning, radio listeners, and welcome again to another program, Let's Talk with the United Alliance. This morning we have a fully packed program for you. Hopefully you'll be really in tune with this one, as we're going to go into a different angle that we have done over the past couple of weeks. But let me start by introducing two special guests in the studio with me this morning. And I'll start with Dr. Buffonge, who have been out for a while. Dr. Buffonge, good morning and welcome back to Let's Talk.
Good morning. Thank you for your welcome. Thank you for having me, everybody. I've been away for a little while. I was like a kid in a candy store working in an emergency room in the UK with all the equipment, all the specialists, all the advice that I needed. I really needed to do it. I'm sorry for not being here during that period, but I'm back now to campaign with these lovely folks. Thanks for joining them along the campaign trail these past few months. I myself have been totally impressed from the beginning, and I continue to be impressed, and very excited to have the new addition to the team, George Kirnon, who is a brilliant man and a regionalist. So I'm hoping that our non-nationals on Ireland will really come to appreciate this man and the work that he's been doing, not only in Montserrat, but in the region at large.
Dr. Buffonge started the introduction to allow you to continue.
Well, good morning, colleagues, good morning, listeners. George Kirnon here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here this morning in the studio. We have this morning a very interesting topic in relation to the relationship, between law and policy. This is a topic, I think, which runs to the heart of government. It runs to the heart of the public service and the way it operates. And I do look forward to engaging you this morning in this important discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we start, I'll share some telephone numbers for those persons who may wish to call or message. 491-7227, 491-9064. You can get us at WhatsApp at 2885. Now, George started this one by talking about the relationship between policy creation, legislation, and decision-making processes. And I think one of the reasons why many governments struggle and many politicians struggle because they fail to be able to put that connection between policy creation, decision-making, and legislation. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. In 2020, the MCAP administration went and passed a legislation which increased the tariffs on sugary drinks. That was a good policy. That was a good legislation. But what was the purpose of the legislation? One, it was intended to reduce the cases of obesity and address the issue with some of the non-communicable diseases, as diabetes. The question is, you brought the legislation to Parliament, but where was the Ministry of Health in promoting the idea and getting people on board so they could appreciate why this decision was made? Then let's flip the corner. The Ministry of Agriculture. If you want people to drink less sugary drinks, what did the Ministry of Agriculture do to increase the production of local drinks? What they do to increase the access to local drinks to the population? So while the legislation itself was intended to be good, all it did at the end of the day was to raise the tariff on sugary drinks. It failed in all the other aspects because there was no follow-up or no follow-through with the legislation. And that is the reason why we have George and Ms. Dorsette here this morning to help to explain to the public that when legislation goes to the Parliament, there must be a connection, a nexus between that piece of legislation and how it affects the people of this community. So George, I'll let you continue from where I started and take the process forward.
Yes, thanks, Austin. Now, the first thing to recognize is that there's a very close relationship between law and policy. Let's take a very simple example. Let's suppose that, let's say turtles are extinct. Turtles are extinct. So there's a policy which says we are going to protect turtles. So we have a law passed which says, Turtle Act, no person shall, destroy turtles, catch turtles, etc. 10 years later, you find that you have enough turtles for people to hunt on a regulated basis. So the policy changes. We're not only going to protect, we're going to regulate. And so the law is amended to permit regulation. 10 years later, you find you have too many turtles. Okay? Too many turtles. And so the law is changed now to say turtles are destroying the beaches and eating the fish and so on. So you have legislation which deals with that situation. So what this example shows is the close relationship between law and policy. Law must at all times be there to promote the policy. Now the next thing to understand is that, and that example is really shows policy and law operating at the domestic level. We must also understand that this relationship also exists at the regional level and also at the constitutional level. So let's take the Constitution, for example. One of the underlying policies in relation to the Constitution is always internal self-governance. Now, there are various policies operating within the Constitution because, of course, the Constitution has various subjects, various topics, and so on. So you have various policies operating. But the overarching policy, where our Constitution is concerned, has always got to be internal self-governance. And so the other night at Salem, I spoke to Section 24 of the Constitution, which speaks to the Deputy Governor having responsibility for the management and leadership of the public service. Now, what was the policy which that step in 2012 was a policy which needed to be enforced? It was a case where Montserrat felt that the governor had too much power and too much control over the public service. And so the policy was embarked upon whereby that unchecked power would be mitigated by introducing into the lineup a deputy governor, which should be a Montserratian. And that speaks for itself. A deputy governor, which should be a Montserratian. All right. So we have a law, a constitution, which now insulates the public service somewhat. Of course, the governor has residual powers where, he or she can direct the deputy governor in specific instances, and that's fine. That's called a residual power. But in the day-to-day administration of the public service, it is the deputy governor who has control. Okay. Step down the line very quickly and let us look at section 83 of the Constitution, which says that the Public Service Commission shall have such oversight functions as may be prescribed by law. Now, that particular provision has gone unnoticed. It has gone unnoticed, but what I want to tell you this morning is that when you take that section 83, where the Public Service Commission could have had an oversight jurisdiction, and by oversight I mean checking and ensuring that the public service is running as it should, just ensuring that everything is functioning as it should. And then section 24, which gives the deputy governor powers over the leadership and management. Between those two provisions, it was possible to pass legislation whereby you decentralize the public service away from the governor. Of course, the governor would always have, as I said, that residual power, but the governor would not be in a position to be walking through the realms of the civil service and taking decisions as she sees fit. That was not the intention. That was not the policy which but Montserrat agreed to. The policy which we agreed to in 2012 was for the public service to be more decentralized. And certainly section 83, which gives the government or the parliament the right to pass legislation to confer oversight powers on the Public Service Commission. When you take those two together, you recognize that there's a policy which has not really been implemented as the Constitution envisaged it. All right, so that's at the level of the Constitution. And then at the regional level, you could also have local policy which influences and impact your regional obligations. So for example, you may find that there's a policy, you want to institute a policy where you want trade flows to be redirected maybe from the US to the UK, for example, and you may want to say, you know what, we want to reduce tariffs for UK products into Montserrat. We discussed that yesterday. Of course, Montserrat is part of the regional arrangement by which there's a common external tariff where Montserrat is obligated to enforce a tariff at a certain level, around 40% currently, on goods which do not originate in CARICOM. Now, to get away from that obligation, you will have to apply for an exemption from CARICOM. Now, that exemption, of course, is done through what you call a quoted, and it involves going to the quoted Council of Trade and Economic Development at CARICOM and arguing and providing justification and defending it, and they will probably give you a limited exemption from maybe a year or 2 years, 3 years, as the case might be. But even there, at that regional level, what our listeners need to understand is this. Going into the region to seek exemptions from policies and from obligations is going to require leadership. I've spoken about this many, many times. We cannot send persons who are inexperienced into the region with this kind of mandate, because guess what? They will not, they're unlikely to succeed, because it takes experience at that level to deal with matters of that magnitude. Now, I would want to pause here for a while. I've thrown out some examples at the domestic level, the constitutional level, and the regional level, where policy and law interact. So that's just to start the ball rolling, and I will come back at a later point and continue our discussion. Go ahead, Austin.
Mr. Kirnon, as you spoke just now, I think for some of us at the table, it brought the reality of what it means to be a leader of a country. Because one of the things that you just clearly stated, if you don't understand how these things operate, then how do you go to CARICOM and say, this is what I want for my people, if you don't understand that basic concept? So when we spoke about leadership and people touted Mr. Meade's ability, this is what a lot of us were saying. It's not any one of us who have the capacity to go out there. Not because you have a mouth to speak, that doesn't give you the capacity to go out and understand at that level and represent at that level. Ms. Dorsette, you also have some legal experience, and I just want to just bring you in here to just sort of expound or speak a little bit about.
What is also important is for those persons, I've seen that from sitting in government, you are given powers by law, and this one by the Constitution. But the public, and this is no hitting on the Public Service Commission, it's important that those who are given authority understand the authority that they're given, so that with the challenges that the Public Service Commission may have found, they can now direct those to one of the members or to the government and said, listen, we need some change here, and to effect their oversight responsibility. The Parliament would have made the necessary legislation, or the government the necessary policy, to ensure that they are operating in an effective manner. We have had a lot of challenges with HR and hiring and etc. Again, we come back to what was the role of the Deputy Governor. The Deputy Governor sits in cabinet with the 4 ministers. The Parliamentary Secretary does not sit with them. Therefore, when you have challenges affecting your members, you need to bring that to Cabinet's attention, where the Deputy Governor can discuss these issues with you. The Governor is also present, so we can have a wholesome and respectful discussion and move forward to effecting the necessary legislation or policy to ensure the conditions under which our public service operates or live, because they spend most of their time at work, ensure high productivity and quality of service. So we see how one affects the other. So we are here, we're experienced persons sitting at this table, and so we are able to advance these changes when the time comes. Persons cannot be sitting on committees or organizations which they have power to exercise, and it's not. And I can speak, for example, to our law that deals with welfare payment. The board is there to make recommendations to the government about what changes is necessary. So power is actually given, but we are not utilizing our power effectively, and we have to ensure that that is not ensure, we are going to ensure that that is going to happen, because we cannot afford to have these satellite organizations and they're not effective at all. So the power is there to ensure that.
Let me raise a question, and I think from a layman's standpoint, a lot of times we have politicians say things happen within the public service. It is with the police, and your politicians say it has nothing to do with me. Is that really the truth? Can politicians sit and say this has nothing to do with decisions that are being made in the public service? It's a question to both of you.
Sorry, before they answer that one, let's just go back to the CARICOM matter. Let's call it regional matters. There are many a time that our leaders and our ministers go to these regional meetings, and they're basically there just sitting at the table without making any contribution to the meetings, which is why in most cases they come back and they have nothing to report. And that is because sometimes they really don't understand what is happening, but they take the trip anyway. Anyway, back over to who's going to respond on the other one.
If I could just respond to what RTM has just said, and to also underscore the significance of what he just said, because you see, every CARICOM meeting has an agenda. And in every agenda, there is some interest that Montserrat would have in the substantive aspects of the agenda. So, in my view, and I've seen exactly what RTM just referred to, but in every agenda matter, Montserrat should be taking to that meeting a policy position. A policy, firstly, how it affects Montserrat, what Montserrat would like to see, and you must be able to argue strenuously for a position. Because coming back home, you need to be able to tell the people, yes, we had this meeting, these were the agendas, whether it's correspondent banking or otherwise. And you are able to articulate for the people of Montserrat what took place at the meeting and what did we achieve at that meeting. But just going back very quickly to something which was raised by Ms. Dorsett. For government to work well and work effectively, the policy objective has got to be set at the level of the cabinet. Okay? It has to be set at the level of the cabinet. So let's suppose the policy objective is that we are going to attract persons from the diaspora. Let's suppose the policy objective is to retain your public servants, or as the case might be. That is the overarching policy objective of the government. So every ministry, every statutory authority, every commission, we have to go to that level and devise a plan for the implementation of the policy. If you don't have that, if you don't have that unity in government and unity of effort and objective, what you find is that every department will be doing something a little different, and it will be very difficult to reconcile the various conclusions you reach and the decisions you make. There has to be a unity of purpose in government. And very quickly to add this, where internal self-government is concerned, right? Internal self-government, as I said earlier, is everybody's business. But what I want to add is this. It is also the governor's business. So when the governor comes, any governor comes, that governor must understand this is the way we are going to implement this constitution. You have a residual power and you can use it from time to time, but not too often. In other words, you will have to leave the public service to the deputy governor as envisaged by the constitution. So the governor has got to buy into the policy. The governor has to stay back and allow the people of Montserrat to be able to function in a way that they are the ones who control the direction of government and, of course, their development. Of course, the governor has certain special responsibilities which should be the preoccupation of the governor on a daily basis. But certainly, the public service, the deputy governor has got to be part of the plan. Not the deputy governor, I'm sorry. The governor has got to be a part of the plan. So the governor would act accordingly. It's not a case where we should be against the governor. The governor is on one side and we are on the other side. She's doing what she wants. There has to be unity of purpose, and that includes the deputy governor. I'm sorry, the governor. I keep saying deputy governor, but the governor. Thank you.
And George is correct, because one of the things that we do in government is we come up with the government of Montserrat policy agenda, and that outlines for us what we are going to focus on. They are also determined and ranked, so everybody should know that. But the challenge is, as you highlighted, are we passing this down through the line so that even if you, and I don't want to segregate, the gardener must understand this is what we're about. So the way you operate, the cleaner, if we're about climate change and it's a priority under agriculture, the products that we will purchase, etc. In addition, the Constitution clearly sets out the minister's portfolio and where they operate. It is also therefore the ministers to ensure that the roles and responsibilities for themselves and the governor, that those are protected. You cannot allow for overreaching and breach, because once you give a person, it's human nature in some cases, that authority, they will take more. And so that again is important. The minister must understand what is the policy agenda. Back to what you said, what does the Constitution mean? Yes. What are we about? Self-determination. And that is why you are given that power, so that you can take your people forward. So all of these must come together for people to understand exactly where we are going. It cannot be ad hoc.
All right, so exactly correct, true. What I've said, sitting as a member of various commissions in Montserrat, is this, and more lately, the Public Service Commission especially, and I'm under obligation not to divulge anything said at the Public Service Commission. That is not my intention here, and I won't do it. But this is what I've said on occasion. We need to have a dialogue. We need to sit down as a people. We need to sit down as a public service and have a dialogue. So I've said, we need a retreat. And at that retreat, we're going to have permanent secretaries. We're going to have middle managers. We're going to have the members of the Public Service Commission. We're going to have the members of the Complaints Commission. We're going to have the statutory authorities, and we're going to sit down in a room a whole week, maybe, if we need that. And we're going to brainstorm, how are we going to get this country going where policy is concerned? How are we going to operate? That is the only way it can be done. Coming together with one people, one public service, and making a determination. Let's put up the flipboard and let's start. How are we going to operate in tandem? And the governor also, in fact, but how are we going to operate in tandem with each other? So we are synced. And once we are synced into each other, then we are well synchronized. A well-oiled machine is moving forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I just say that this country needs a lot of work. The public service needs a lot of work. I'm here. RTM is here. We're all here. And we know exactly what needs to be done, and we are going to get it done.
Okay, let me flip to some of the other members at the table. Dr. Buffonge, one of the things that we speak a lot about is health policy and health legislation. And as you listen to them, from your perspective, do we normally align our policy with legislation, or we just pass legislation and there's no policy to go along with that legislation, in your opinion?
Well, health legislation is very, very old. There's a Medical Act and the Public Health Act, and neither of them properly address the problems that we're facing in this current time. They don't affect why people are dying prematurely. They don't address our need to improve the type of care that we provide to persons on Montserrat. I may first say that I'm extremely excited to be sitting in between two lawyers at this table. People of Montserrat, there are two lawyers on this team. And as a doctor wanting to be a politician, wanting to effect change, which involves changing policy and changing law, this is the very best position to be in. These are very intelligent people. I'm very excited. Is it okay if I go off on a tangent, on a rant about healthcare?
Take a rant, but we'll bring you back to the whole idea of legislation and policy.
Okay, so the problems in health that I generally speak about are the fact that we have poor health outcomes in many cases and high death rates. If we want to define policy is a process by which governments translate their political vision into programs and actions to deliver the desired outcomes. So a course or a general plan of action adopted by a government. The overall aim that we have, this party, the United Alliance, is to provide excellence in healthcare delivery for Montserrat, and in particular, because it's where we fall short in how we deliver emergency care and critical care. And we want it to be that the care that we provide to the citizens on island, to people who live on Montserrat, is the care that is comparable to what you'd receive in a first world country. So there's no reason why living in Montserrat should make it more difficult for you to access care. You should not necessarily receive suboptimal care, no matter what your medical condition, because we need to be on par with the international community, and we need to make sure that in your time of need, we can get you to the right place so that your life can be saved. And in some cases, it's life, or it can be a limb. The sort of policy actions, or the policy actions that this government really should be and will be pushing forward are, I'm going to list them as 5 or maybe 6 things. Firstly, to develop or adopt UK guidelines and protocols in emergency care. We want to bring in emergency medicine consultants to help Montserrat to modify guidelines that are presently used in other countries and have them relevant to the Montserrat setting, and also to train staff and to organize our emergency services. So they established guidelines in other countries. In the UK, it's the NICE guidelines, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, and in emergency care, the guidelines produced by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. So I think one of the things that we have to be certain that we are going to action on is to make sure that we are doing the right thing in terms of guidelines and protocols for the management of specific conditions. We need to also make sure that I've spoken for years about improving our diagnostic capability, and it took 10 to 15 years to get a CT scanner on Ireland, and still at present, it's still sitting there. I think what this government and the government before perhaps have not understood is that machines don't operate themselves. So we have a beautiful CT scanner that's been installed and ready to go for many, many months, but they've not created a budget for making sure that there's a CT radiographer on Ireland to operate the machine, and for making sure that we are linked with a radiologist who will decide on which scans get approved quickly, and who will ultimately interpret the images of the scanner and produce a report, an acceptable report. So it's important that we pay attention to the fact that, yes, we need equipment, but we also need to be able to operate this equipment. I remember well over 10 years ago when Montserrat got its first in a long time ultrasound, the PS at the time invited doctors to a half-day training, and then went on the radio in the evening and said, yes, the doctors have now had their training and we're ready to go with the ultrasound machine. Mark you, we did not have a sonographer. We did not have somebody who could actually operate the machine in full. So the machines don't operate themselves. So policy, one, on making sure we have guidelines and protocols in place for the management of conditions. Two, that we actually are addressing the huge problem with staffing on Montserrat, which is a big deal. Number three, I think, we want to make sure that we explore partnerships in telemedicine. And this is really important for services in the emergency setting. So the initial guidelines that we have must match the guidelines for the country that we're dealing with, that we're getting advice from. And in many cases, this country is going to be receiving our patients, so we've got to be on par with what they're doing. And in particular, as this relates to stroke and heart attack. So in stroke and heart attack, so I often talk about the fact that people in Montserrat are dying from the cardiovascular complications of the chronic non-communicable diseases. So Caribbean countries have had, 40 years to realize the rising prevalence of diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and to be very aware of their complications. And in the terms of cardiovascular diseases is stroke and heart attack. Very often on Montserrat, you get a heart attack, you die, except in the few expertly managed cases where persons have managed to get off island and have coronary artery intervention to save their lives. And in stroke, we have complained for years and years that our stroke patients go from the casualty at Glendon to the ward at Glendon, and then maybe 48 hours later somebody decides to scan them, at which point their paralysis has set in permanently. So to have good stroke care, this all needs to be done and dusted within 4 hours. So it has got to be a big health promotion effort so that people who have a stroke realize that they're having one, or their relatives realize they're having one, get them to the hospital, no. We scan them, no. We send the images, no. And we have expert advice through telemedicine from a stroke team that will then decide on what care we can give the patient. And very often this can be a clot-busting drug that will reverse the effects of stroke. So rather than have a person being left with permanent paralysis on one side and not being able to speak and not being able to go back into the workforce, why not be able to manage these patients properly? So that's for stroke and for heart attack. In the UK, for example, in terms of types of policies that we can have in place to make sure we have fast diagnosis, fast initial management, and in the Montserrat setting, fast medevac. The UK's National Stroke Programme was the UK policy designed to achieve a 10-fold increase in patients receiving thrombolysis for stroke and thrombectomy. So actual intervention for stroke in 2019 was seen to be taking too long to happen, and they've put things in place through changes in policy to make sure that stroke patients are managed now. So in the emergency department, very often the stroke patient is seen before the emergency physician sees the patient. The stroke nurse has seen the patient, requested the scan, and is in touch with her consultant, and treatment is already underway as soon as the scan result is obtained. So we need to get to that level of care. There is no investor who wants to come to Montserrat to have a stroke, to end up on Glendon, for us to tell him, oh, sorry, we have problems with access, therefore we cannot get you out today. Maybe we'll get you out by next week, Friday, at which point you've basically ruined this person's entire life. Also, in the UK, the National Health Service Framework for Coronary Artery Disease in March of 2000 was put in place to help healthcare professionals to give better and faster care to persons who are having a heart attack. And its positive achievements were that immediate treatment of heart attack was achieved. And also, they developed the Myocardial National Audit project, which allowed them to improve on efficiency by assessing the work that they were doing and assessing outcomes. Which brings me to the next point, in that there is no way that we can have a health service that does not address its failures. So very often here, looking at what we have done, looking at how we have managed patients, is seen as something punitive. It's not something punitive at all. In order to improve on the care that we provide, we must look at the ways in which we've not provided good care over the last several years. So one of the policies that I think that we should be focusing on is to make sure that we are encouraging data collection, audit, and research, that we are encouraging it and facilitating it and guiding it. And this is for all health professionals. So it can be done by all medical staff of various levels. And it's assessing how we work. So it's only by showing that we can only find our successes by, we can only, sorry, distracted by the timer. It is only by looking at our failures and looking at where we went wrong, addressing how we've managed patients, that we can actually, so to do this, we need to do audits, we need to do research, we need to address how we're actually working. And in countries in the region now, they're actually putting health policy in place to make sure that data collection is swift and easy, because it's something that's going to be used to guide funding. So you can direct funding because you can convince your funding agents that, look, we really need funding in this area because, look, this is where we are falling short. In Bermuda, for example, in 2024, that's this year in May, they produced an amendment to the Bermuda Health Act that addresses the need for data collection, to facilitate data collection to make sure that we are getting all the information we need to properly assess ourselves. So we need to produce the evidence on an ongoing basis, and this evidence is going to advise policy. Like you were saying, laws and policy are not something static, they have to change over time. How are you going to change them? You're going to change them because you're really analyzing the effectiveness of what you have in place. We want to also create policy to address cancer deaths on Montserrat and to address the problem of late diagnosis. In the UK, the Faster Diagnosis Framework of 2022 was aimed to deliver earlier and faster diagnosis of cancer for patients. It was aimed to increase the capacity to more efficient diagnostic pathways and to support healthcare providers to reach the faster diagnosis standards, with improvements along all cancer pathways, regardless of the cancer type, to make sure that persons get referred as well for fast cancer treatment. So we want to diagnose our cancers early so that you don't keep finding persons with stage 4 cancer. It is heartbreaking on Montserrat to see somebody for the first time in 5 years to have to tell them, I am sorry, I strongly believe that you have a cancer that has metastasized. What can I really do for that person then? So we need to be big time. We need to put our money in cancer screening as well to make sure that we are finding our cancers early, because then we can do something about it. If we find you with an early cancer, sort that out quickly and you can go back to work, you can go back to have a normal life and just monitor it over time. So the Faster Diagnosis Framework of 2022 was contributing to an earlier plan that the UK had in their NHS long-term plan to make sure that a greater proportion of cancers were diagnosed early and that a greater proportion of cancer patients were going to survive. And the question of, if they're doing that in the UK, why are we not doing it on Montserrat? Because as I like to keep saying, the reality of Montserrat life is that the governor and the British government like to control a lot of things, and that's okay, we're a colony, but they specify that the healthcare of the citizens of the overseas territories are the responsibility of the governments of the overseas territories and not the responsibility of the British government. So they may be responsible for lots of things, but they don't really care about your health to that extent. It is the government that you elect that is going to have to make the changes necessary, make sure that we all survive life on this island. And if you broaden it to repatriation, and like I was saying earlier, investors coming to the island, or people visiting and deciding that they want to buy a house and stay, nobody's going to want to live here if we're not on par with the international world in terms of healthcare. Montserrat should not be a death trap by our failure to have the right guidelines, the right equipment, or even our major access failures that over and over again have created problems for us. We want to also make sure that we've launched some version of a national insurance scheme, and this will take some time and some work. And whether we want to have our model like the UK NHS model, the National Health Service in the UK, where tax money is diverted to healthcare to make sure that we can provide free service in certain areas, or whether or not we want to have something like Antigua's medical benefit scheme, where healthcare is subsidized largely. In Anguilla, the National Health Fund was enacted in 2011 that allowed Anguilla to launch a national insurance scheme. That's in 2014. In the Cayman Islands, they have gone further in making sure that there's health insurance available at different costs that cover a different range of things. But in the Cayman Islands, in 2021, their Health Insurance Act mandated that all persons had at least basic health insurance. So how are you going to pay for health care? We have to give it a lot of thought. So we have to put something in place. So by having a national health insurance scheme, or by insisting on health insurance for patients in the private sector, we will make sure that all patients on Montserrat can afford care, and that the government of Montserrat can afford to provide this excellent health care to persons in our communities. This might be my last point, that we have, like I was saying, we have ignored some things in terms of the complications of the chronic non-communicable diseases. Over the last 40 years, we have realized that diabetes and hypertension are the leading causes of end-stage kidney disease in the region, and it is a big deal. Kidney failure is a problem. Dialysis units in the region, including Antigua, are over full. Just to get into a dialysis program in Antigua costs a lot of money and is a huge challenge because they have their own persons on a waiting list. So Montserrat needs to explore dialysis. This is an absolute must, and this is the party that's going to make sure that it happens on Montserrat. In 2014, the PDM were offered dialysis machines for free. All they had to do was say yes, and they said no. It wasn't relevant to them at the time. The other thing, as it pertains to the complications of the chronic non-communicable diseases, we have been lamenting in this party about the rising rate of amputations on Montserrat. So many of our men in the community have lost their legs. And in order to do this, we've got to ensure that health policy addresses the problem of the diabetic foot and circulatory problems in persons, not when it's end stage, when the foot is black and about to drop off and you have to operate, but several years before. So we need to make sure that every year these persons are having a foot assessment done. And if there is a vascular problem that needs intervention, no, let's get you to a vascular surgeon and get that intervention. If it is better control of your diabetes, let's push to get better control of your diabetes, because we do not want to have more persons in our communities have to have amputation. So really important that we address these. So just a rant about healthcare as usual. I've got a couple of things on education, but that can come after. I am very excited, I say over again, that we have lawyers on the team that will help to address the deficiencies that our health laws have, and to help us to put in place policies that are going to allow us to finally save lives, and not just say when people die on Montserrat, instead of saying, oh yeah, it's a failure of our service to save them, we say, oh well, it was their time. All right? It was not their time. We did not have what was necessary to look after them.
Dr. Buffonge, I want to thank you. Let me say something to you. You're not going to live in the UK, now you have to come back home. So I know mommy and daddy over there, but this team is going to ensure that your services are better utilized on the island, because I think you're a tremendous asset to this country, and it's for us to accept and recognize that each person comes with their own strengths and their own abilities, and find the best ways to utilize the people of this country. And you're one example. I'm sure Mr. Mega agree with me. We're not like, come up there.
Austin,
I'll maybe on holiday.
Austin, thank you. I have heard stories of all sorts of infighting in the other parties, and I just want to say that I love this team. I have been warmly accepted in this team, and I'm sure every member of this team can say so. It has been an enjoyable experience so far.
Okay, so listeners, you can call us at 491-2227, 491-9064, or 496-2885. John, is there anything happening on the WhatsApp line?
While John checks that, Austin, what I really want to say is coming on the back of the healthcare services that Dr. Ingrid Buffonge just outlined so wonderfully. I would like to say that, even on the sports side, there's some things as well as policy that are already prepared. And I can't understand when certain documents are reaching 3 levels of preparation and gone out, why we can't address them quickly as we get into office. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, I think we have a caller on the line. Caller, good morning and welcome to Let's Talk with United Alliance. Caller, good morning. Okay, I think we may have lost that caller. So we'll continue with this discussion of the judge. You're also in the room and you believe to these people. I mean, the talent that seems to be coming out across there.
Can I just to address again with policy, and that was highlighted by Dr. Buffonge, we must move from the vision, and we are forgetting the vision. Government is continuous, let us say that, but you have the national vision, and our first pillar is health, for example. Now, when you move from that vision and you get in your manifesto, which is the mandate that the people are giving you to go in, should be reflected, and you have that discussion as the minister for the... You have a caller?
Caller, good morning and welcome to Let's Talk with the United Alliance.
Yes, hello, good morning. Good morning to the Alliance. It is indeed a pleasure for me to hear my former colleague, George Kirnon, on the radio. I just want to, in terms of indicating to those who may not know George, I'll just give you a particular circumstance of my own. When joining the air traffic control unit at the airport back then, the first thing that George did to us as new recruits told us we have to learn general orders. 2 weeks, we had to sit down and we learned general orders and he quizzed us. This is just an example of the type of individual which he mentored us in a way to understand that you are going into the public service, so you must understand the public service. And it's the same way you're hearing him demonstrating in terms of his legal background, why there's certain things that must be done in a particular way in terms of governance in the country. And so, George, I just want to say thank you for that upbringing. But I also want to go on to say to people and the listeners to understand what it is that the UAE team is bringing here in terms of the understanding of the preparatory work, the capacity and experience to deliver hope for Montserrat. Because as we go back, I can use even a pertinent example that was just mentioned. The other day when we had the last heads of government meeting on Montserrat, Ralph Gonzalez said to us in discussion, we are no longer doing amputations for the diabetes. We have learned from the Cubans, and we have a team in St. Vincent that we are no longer doing amputations. And that was in a request from Nurse Brenda to ask for assistance from St. Vincent. And he said he couldn't give money, but we can send patients. And so in hearing this issue of the number of amputees, I am wondering, and maybe Dr. Buffonge could comment on that, why aren't we sending our folks to St. Vincent or to Cuba, at the heart of the techniques of the medicine where we're reducing these amputations? So overall, I said just congratulations, gentlemen. Keep on going, showing the light, because even those who were there in the past government didn't even allow the current leader to even attend the last heads of government meeting. Where is the mentorship? Where is the development? You know, so just a couple of comments I just want to rest on you guys and for the general public to understand where we are going and where the UAE is going. If you're a patriot, you have to vote UAE. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm flattered, actually. I was trying to find out, trying to discern the voice of the speaker, and I still haven't been able to discern, but that's fine. Yes, I was in air traffic control for several years, and it was always in my nature to be the nurturing kind. And I must also say that some of the best relationships I've had in my lifetime was as an air traffic controller at Blackburn Airport. We were just as a team. The camaraderie was just something else. And, you know, it just goes back to what I've always said, the way we need to operate with each other. Basil Morgan comes to mind. Oh, I think that caller may have been you. I think I know who that caller is now. Yes.
Norman Castle.
No, yes, Norman. But Basil was a security chief at the airport at the time when I worked there. And Basil used to call me Reason. And one day he said to Basil, why do you call me Reason? He said, but George, you don't understand. Every time there's a problem, you always say, come, let us reason. And so it wasn't so obvious to me because it was just something which was so innate that I always saw the need to move past conflicts. Rather than adjudicating in the courts or otherwise, it's always good to sit down and have a discussion. One more thing, in relation to what Norman spoke about in the general orders, in terms of nurturing, I'm very happy that he remembered and that others, I think Hodge and Raymond and all the others, Straw, everyone would remember the kind of relationship that we had there. But I must say something very quickly. This may not be part of the conversation this morning, but when I came back from law school in early 90s, I looked around the government, I looked around Montserrat and I said, but you know what? We only have 3-4 lawyers. We only have 3-4 lawyers. Where are we going with this? We have to enlarge the envelope and we have to get people in here who know law. Not only lawyers, but certainly persons who understand the Constitution and so on. So I had a school. I started a little school at Salem, which I call the Little Law Center. And I said to people, you all want to come and learn something, learn law? And they said, yes. And who came to that school? Fitzroy Buffonge, Horace Sullivan, Williams from the police, and several other persons who, Rodney from the police, and several others, and several, in fact, what's his name? Roach. Several lawyers, 3 or 4 lawyers today are actually graduates of my law school. And what that did is that it showed that within my heart, Montserrat was always first. It showed that I was that kind of person who just wanted to see Montserrat progress. Not so much that I'm a lawyer and it's okay, and but certainly I wanted to see Montserrat progress where the people are enlightened and the people are empowered to take Montserrat forward.
Good day. I think we have another caller. Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk to the United Alliance.
George.
Yes, caller, go ahead. Hello. Okay, so that George or Dr. Buffonge, you want to continue that?
Well, I think I've said pretty much what I wanted to say, but I'm very heartened, I'm very flattered, and I thank Norman for that endorsement. And I'm pretty sure guys like Hodge and Raymond, I hope they're listening, Straw, and all of the guys who were, Basil Morgan, Win Spear, all the guys who used to be so much locked into a comradeship at the airport. So I'm hoping that all of us would come together again to recognize that where our support needs to be, it needs to be behind the alliance. And let me just say something that Dr. Buffonge said earlier. This team is a dynamic team. From the time I first came and met them in Sweeney's on St. John's at that meeting, I just knew. Arthur Brooks was also part of the airport crew too. From the time I met them at the airport, from at Sweeney's, I recognized that I had come home to a place where I can work. And from then on, I just felt comfortable and feel comfortable. Led by, of course, RTM, who, of course, is a guru, as we all know.
Yeah, I think we have a caller on the line, George. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Let's Talk with the United Alliance.
Good morning. I want to ask Mr. Kirnon why it took you so long to come home. Why? Thank you.
Well, if I could give the example, if I can tell you a little story, this is something which has been, and many people know this. Every time there's an election in Montserrat, I just always felt a craving. But my circumstances were always such that, there was one little story I must tell you. I was flying in an aircraft coming home to Montserrat about a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. And on that aircraft was a guy called Laserman. And he was sitting ahead of me, and we were the only 2 passengers. The aircraft coming between Blackburn and Antigua usually flies at about 2,500 feet, clear day, no problem, and so on. But on that occasion, I recognized we were like up to 4,000 feet. The clouds were about, the turbulence was very, very bad, and it was dark and raining and buffeting against the aircraft. Laserman turned around in his seat and he just said to me, but look what we come to. That's what he said. He just said, look what we come to. And I felt that. I really felt that. He didn't have to say anything else. I didn't respond. But the rest of that journey was just a reflection. And it is those moments which has caused me to ponder and said, you know what? I cannot wait any longer. I cannot wait any longer. And so it has taken me some time to come back. But I do hope that the contribution which I'm making and is prepared to make would be welcome and embraced. And let me just add this one more before let me just add this. It's very saddening to me when I hear other persons in other parties saying, rather than responding to the things or the points and the submissions I may have made in relation to leadership and so many other issues, they are threatening to object to my participation in the elections. Now, how can you go about loving Montserrat and telling people you love Montserrat? Exactly. How can you go about saying those things and then say you have someone who comes here who is a constitutional lawyer and willing to really assist us in so many areas, the development experience, all of these attributes and competencies, and the only thing you can do as a person who loves Montserrat is to walk about saying that you are going to object. Objecting to me, ladies and gentlemen, is really empowering what happens in our society, what happens in our public service. It is empowering the governor because you are removing from the equation another force. You are removing from the equation a circumstance which would cause the governor's powers to be checked. In other words, I am not opposed to the governor. What I do know, and I received 2 letters just this week. 2 letters just this week. One from the governor and one from the attorney general. And it is very clear to me from those letters what the intention is. The intention is we just want somebody to object to you, and we are ready for you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say this. The candidates running in this election need to understand what we're dealing with. Let us deal with each other in terms of what the issues are, but what we need to do is understand what is our place in this country. Objecting to me is not justified in my respectful view, and if you do that, then I think you must be prepared to tell the people why have you done that, and it could only be self-interest. Thank you, RTM.
Yeah, just want to touch on that very briefly.
Yeah.
Let's assume that they got through with their objection.
Yes.
And you're taken off the list. We will run with our 9 candidates. So even on nomination day, if you don't get through, you will still be part of this team. So what they're trying to get away from, you will still be here and you still will be part of the United Alliance in one form or the other. So no matter what happens. So let them fight. There are 20 odd of them fighting against the United Alliance, not against the government, but against the United Alliance. We're going to remain as a team, irrespective of whatever challenges, and we're going to make things happen in this country.
the paradox of being Montserratian and loving your country. On the one hand, you're told, come home, and then you come home and then you are fought against big time. So please allow this man to finally help his country by running with this team to put the changes forward that we need on Ireland in order to progress. It has been stagnation for way too long. I wanted to quickly address Norman's comment on the why about diabetic foot amputations. The Caribbean Health Research Council in 2007 produced a document, which is still a relevant document, and they still maintain, to the question of when should you look at the foot of a diabetic patient. The answer is every time you see the diabetic patient. So it's essential, without pointing fingers and going down a negative pathway, it is essential going forward that every time a diabetic patient visits a district clinic or a private doctor, that they have a foot examination, that we're assessing the foot pulses, we're assessing circulation, and that we're able to detect early damage. That has to be insisted upon so that these persons can be referred early. There's a certain person in one of the islands who is a friend of my mom. I won't mention the island to not pinpoint her, but whenever I see her, she asks me, she's trying to implement a regional diabetic foot program. She has asked me for a couple of years now, Ingrid, what is going on in Montserrat? I'm trying to push forward for this diabetic foot program and I'm not getting positive response. It should not take her 2 years to be welcomed, to have a team come for free and train and make sure that we have the right things in place to save our diabetics' legs. So rather than looking backwards, we're going forwards with policies that are going to help our people to continue to have their limbs.
And just to add, for the Cuban aspect, the Cuban element of the discussion, we would need to repair our relationship with Cuba. We've had some challenges, and those are going to be addressed. We see how Antigua is benefiting enormously from the association with Cuba. So is St. Kitts in producing doctors, etc. And from my understanding, they also produce teachers. Jamaica is benefiting from that. So that's an area we must look at revisiting and repairing our relationship with Cuba.
I don't know, Austin has been prompting me to talk, but one thing I must say is that I feel very proud sitting here today, very proud of this team. I was supposed to be giving some input, but I got so engaged with Mr. Kirnon and Dr. Buffonge speaking today that I just decided to just lay back and just listen to the wealth of knowledge that they have within their fields. And I want people to understand that it's their passion and their love for Montserrat, why they have sat down and have researched these topics to the point that they have the solutions for these topics. We know that there's nobody in the political field currently that would fix healthcare better than Dr. Buffonge. And with Mr. Kirnon on the team now, along with Ms. Hector, we know that all the policy decisions that we can have on Montserrat, all the laws that we need changed, will be fixed.
Amen.
They are passionate enough that they have sat down and have done the research. So my input today is just to sit back and say that I am very, very proud of this team, and I know that we are the team that will change Montserrat.
But key to our success, and we go back to leadership, is that we have a leader who understands what is necessary for the people of Montserrat to benefit, and a leader who will hold each minister and parliamentary secretary accountable. We would have seen that under, not to go back to the past, but you cannot help that during his time, where the parliamentary secretary was empowered, so that we can boast now of the multipurpose center, sports center that we have, that he allowed Mr. Wade to champion and to carry forward. As a Minister of Finance as well, you need to understand where you want to take your people and allocate the necessary finance, find the finance as well to ensure that the people, because everything that we do, every policy, every legislation, every program, it comes back to our people benefiting. And that is critical for to understand. It's not about you sitting in and lauding yourself as minister while your people suffer.
Well, you see, this touches on another topic, and that's access. We have been saying that we will have a ferry here by mid-November, which will not be costing the government of Montserrat any money, other than the standard onshore cost. Lo and behold, you're having a tender being put out for a ferry, which will cost the government $10 million over a 5-month period. That $10 million could be much better spent in healthcare and in education, or for fixing the roads, depending on what the priorities are. So why do we continue to waste government's money? The other one, yes, we have 2 airlines operating. We know that the Twin Otter can operate in Montserrat. So why is it that we're tendering for airline services into Montserrat? Again, that's another $10 million. So you're looking at $20 million. We're saying we're short of money. So why, therefore, are they going ahead with these plans to tender these things out? Give us the $20 million and we will put that towards healthcare, to buy some of the things that are required,
Training.
in education, in training, and fixing our roads, fixing Mull. $20 million. When in fact you can have that service provided free of cost by the private sector. It makes absolutely no sense. But then the government sits there and says, in 100 days, this is what we're going to do, or like what some of us used to do with COG. So when you hear United Alliance coming out with a policy, they are saying, me too. And they had 1,820-something days in office. Could not come up with any of those policy decisions. But all of a sudden, they get bright. And they can say, these are things you can expect us to do. What are we supposed to believe from them? We can say, as the United Alliance, when we say that we are going to do something, we will do it. Mrs. Hector gave me an assignment. Well, let me go back to Ingrid. Dr. Buffonge came to me with a reference of an autistic child. And within a week, we had someone working with that autistic child. That had nothing to do with politics. And then others started coming and saying, oh, and we will do it because we have shown that. Mrs. Hector came to me before she went off to Boston, indicating here is a farmer that has to move their chicken operation. And within 1 week, we had that farmer in a position ready to relocate. After our Cudgerhead meeting, a farmer came to me and said, if I can get 2 acres of land, I will go into full-time agricultural production. Within 1 week, the farmer was shown the land, and by next week, he's ready to occupy that piece of land. And the landowner has said, but I have 50 additional acres that I can make available to you. So when we're saying we can do things, it is not because we want to talk as politicians. It is because we have the capacity, the capability, and the knowledge of how to get it done.
Dwayne, I want to bring in a little moment to have say a word.
And that's why I'll say that we need to really, and networking is really the key here, because we need to really network more with our closer regional counterparts, especially Guadeloupe, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Antigua, because there's a lot of things that they have already put in a lot of groundwork in terms of tourism, and it's not trying to be lazy, but we have to be strategic in what we do. And we can work, there's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but we want to go far. So that's why we could take some of these regional counterparts on board.
Yeah, I think we have a call on the line. Caller, good morning, and welcome to Let's Talk with the United Alliance.
Yes, good morning. So one of the pillars of leadership is knowing yourself and seeking self-improvement. Mr. Meade, what can you improve on?
Well, one of the things, and I've said it before, who is a man who has never made a mistake? But one of the things is that having made the mistakes, as you get older, you recognize that you need to fix those mistakes. And that is one of the things that happens with experience.
We have calls coming again. Caller, welcome to Let's Talk with the United Alliance.
Hello there. Good afternoon. Good morning. Hi, this is Sonia Charles speaking. Hello, can you hear me?
Welcome to Let's Talk.
Hi, this is Sonia Charles. I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
We're hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Hearing you. Go ahead, Sonia. We're hearing you.
Okay, lovely. Wonderful. Just want to say, based on the topic discussed earlier on about diabetic foot and the care for the diabetics, we think we need a good radiology system, and the nurses and doctors are okay, but when you have a good radiology system in place with doing ultrasound scans and other investigations as a multidisciplinary team, then it works well. And I think we need to look at that for the future, regardless of who gets into power. A good radiology department is essential to having a really good healthcare on Montserrat. We have a void. We know there is a void, but we know that we can fix it if we have a radiologist on island and we have the additional trained staff on island to provide these services.
Thanks, Sonia. I just want to say on island, in addition to Sonia's work with the Pink Ribbon Charity this month, she will be doing ultrasounds of the carotid arteries for all patients at risk of stroke. So carotid artery ultrasound allows us to detect persons who already have atherosclerosis in the carotid arteries, which is a risk factor for stroke. And depending on the level of plaque formation or blockage, we can then refer these persons on for either medical or surgical intervention to ensure that they do not get a stroke. So I know this is not an advertising forum, but this is not an advertisement. This is about health and reducing stroke risk. Please book with us to see Sonia this month to have your carotid arteries assessed, and she'll also be doing some peripheral circulatory scans as well.
So let's advertise it. It is absolutely necessary for people to do what is required.
It's essential.
And she's coming all the way from Dubai to come back to Montserrat to help the people of Montserrat.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. So if you're over 40, if you've got high cholesterol, diabetes, a family history of stroke or heart attack, if you're known to be at risk, or you simply want to know what your risk for stroke is because you're over 40, over 50, or definitely over 60, please book for us to have an assessment of your carotid arteries done so we can assess your stroke risk and work on that.
Well, we are getting close to the time when we need to wrap up. So instead of rushing you guys, I'm going to give you a few minutes to just give your final input. Who wants to go first?
I would say there's only one party that's in this election cycle that you can vote for, and it's the United Alliance. All 9, all the way.
And I just want to tell the listeners that as you listen to the voices around the table and reflect on the members of the United Alliance Party, we are personal, we are passionate, and we are poised. We are asking on October 24th for your endorsement to make this party, the United Alliance, the government going forward for your beloved country, Montserrat.
I'll just wrap up with a question that just came in. It says, Mr. Meade and team, quick question. would you seek and welcome advice from the elders in the community, especially experienced and those with special skills but retired? And the simple answer is yes.
Yes.
And if you've been following our campaign as well, you'll realize that a lot of what we bring forward and a lot of the issues that we bring forward come from the community, because we want to be an inclusive party and we want everybody to be a part of the development of Montserrat. So even within the team, we have team policies. Like one thing you would have heard Mr. Meade say is that, one, we're going to bring back what's on your mind, but there must be a minister or parliamentary secretary on the program, depending on what we're dealing with, so that we can interact directly with you. And two, as a party, we will have open days whenever we get into government for anybody to just come and see us and have those discussions. So yes, to answer your question, we are an inclusive party, and we know that we want everybody to be a part of the development of Montserrat.
Well, I would want to follow on from that. As many persons would know, I am about transgenerational. We do not segregate. As I've said, it's one for all and all for one when it comes to United Alliance Party. We are people of action. We have practical ways of solving issues. We're experienced and know how government works, capable, and we care. And so we are ready to collaborate, advocate, and give you the respect that you need, put Montserrat back on the map, and ensure that there is equity and equality, justice for all in this country. And so I would say to you, without a shadow of a doubt, vote United Alliance. This is the party of hope, of inspiration that can, with God's help and your help, together, we can take this country to another level, and that's a level of excellence in all we undertake.
I think it's very important for listeners to understand the significance of having a team, a real team with team dynamics. I've seen it work within the UA. I feel it, and somehow I just feel that this team is the team to take Montserrat forward. One more point. Earlier, Mr. Meade said that whatever happens on nomination day, that I will continue to work with the United Alliance. Let me just say firstly that I will and I am in a position to defend any objection that comes my way on nomination day. That's the first point. But all I ask for is due process. I'm given the opportunity to respond to any objection in the right way. And also for my nomination to remain on course pending any consideration or determination of that matter. So ladies and gentlemen, I just wish to say to Montserrat, to the team, and to all listening, that I will be here. Whatever happens, I will continue to work, whatever capacity, to work with the United Alliance throughout this process and even after they take office. So trying to get me out of the race on nomination day is not going to achieve the objective which they seek to achieve. Thank you very much.
I will send a special message for you here, actually. And I think you'll figure out who it's from. Person said, tell Mr. Kirnon, I say he'd answer the question. He used to tell the people that he has children, family, and work matters, and he's been planning over the years to return. And now the children left to study, he's in a better position now. And I'm sure you could figure out who that is.
Well, I can't, but yes. Sometimes we have to look after the youth first before, duty calls. Yes. But now I'm in a position to be here, and I'm here to stay. Thank you. Oh.
That was from your daughter.
Oh, I'm here, yeah. Okay.
Hey, Amuel. Just to say, people of Montserrat, do not allow the other parties to fight against this man. He has finally come home to help us. On the one hand, we say come home and help, and then we fight you down. So let's not fight down something that's obviously very positive, a very positive addition to Montserrat. My sum up is that we are led by a very intelligent, experienced, and accomplished leader, that we are a strong team, that you have 9 votes and you should vote for the United Alliance Party. All 9 for the United Alliance.
You did yours already? Yes. Okay, my final wrap-up is this. Yes, I may be the leader of this team, but over the months that I've been working with this grouping, you have 9 leaders within this team. So I dropped dead tonight. Not that I plan to, no, because there's some of them who hope I fall dead. Any member of this team can take the team forward. That's one. Because part of what we have been doing over the past few months is nurturing each member of this team to be a better person and a better leader. I tend to sit back and allow the team to do their thing. And I'm very, very pleased that this team is the one who will take us forward. Secondly, this thing about non-nationals and nationals and Montserratians from here and Montserratians who went away, we have to stop that. It has to be one people, one island, one people. So whether or not you're in New York, London, anywhere in the United Kingdom, United States, or wherever you are, whether you were born in Guyana, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, United States, or wherever, and you have chosen Montserrat as your home, we're all one people. When you find that a team who has not been in government, who is not in government, that the government team and the opposition, the formal opposition team, along with the independents, can only find this team to fight against, it means that they have no interest in Montserrat, and all they want is to get into office for a salary. We can't have that anymore if we're planning to develop this country. Put a team in office who has the experience, who have the competence. Don't talk to us about, oh, you have a friend here and a friend there. Vote all 9 so that we don't end up with this foolishness of coalition, because a coalition means that you're putting back the same incompetence and the same incompetence in government. They couldn't do anything for the past 10 years, but they want to continue. Port project at a standstill, hospital project we've been talking about, no contract signed. The ferry deal, which has gone wrong and want to waste additional money. Let us, 3 weeks from now, vote all 9 for the United Alliance. We will bring and make this country much better for all. Thank you very much, one and all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, team, and thank you very much, listeners, for being with us. I will be here next week, Thursday, same time.